How I found out about my husband's double life and his cheating. I'm sharing my story because it feels like the only way to keep myself from losing my mind. Last night, my entire life fell apart in a single instant. It was a typical autumn evening in our suburb near Chicago, October 8, 2023. I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of hot tea. Outside, the warm lights of our cozy neighborhood glowed softly in the evening. The air smelled of freshly baked pies that our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, always left to cool on her porch every Sunday. Life was calm and predictable, though sometimes that predictability felt stifling. As a mother of 2 young children and a wife to a husband constantly away on business, I often felt like a prisoner in this small house, where the only sounds were children's laughter or cries. But I had no idea that peaceful evening would end in a terrible storm. A loud knock at the door shattered my thoughts at exactly 7:47 p.m. I jumped, spilling my tea on my hand. The sudden pain, the burning skin. These were quickly forgotten when I saw who was standing at the door. 3 police officers in full uniform with grim expressions. At the front was the lead officer, a stocky man in his 40s with a short gray beard and cold, piercing eyes. "Sorry to intrude, Mrs. Smith," he said. His voice wasn't harsh or friendly, just neutral, but the words that followed shattered my reality completely. "We're looking for your husband, Michael Smith. He is suspected of large-scale fraud. We have a warrant to search this house." In that moment, a terrible silence echoed in my head. I couldn't say anything, couldn't move. Those few seconds felt like an eternity as my children, Alice and Jack, sat in the next room, absorbed in a cartoon on TV. The police entered, dividing the space of our safe haven, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. The feeling was unbearable. I stood there, seemingly on the edge of consciousness, unable to comprehend how this was happening to me. My only anchor was my children. I had to stay strong, even as I felt my world falling apart. How many times in my life had I already felt this sense of collapse? When Michael lost his job and we had to sell our first home and move here, when I had to give up my own ambitions to support his career, when I lay awake at night while he was far away, it all seemed like nothing compared to this. Detective Anderson, I read his name on his badge, looked at me with something close to pity. I saw exhaustion in his eyes. This was a man who had likely seen much darkness that couldn't be defended against. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked. I could only shake my head weakly. I couldn't believe Michael could be involved in something so awful. Weren't we a normal family? Or had everything been a lie from the beginning? My hand was still burning from the spill, but the pain now seemed so trivial, almost laughable, in the shadow of my life's destruction. The police moved through the rooms, turning our belongings inside out, as if our entire home was the stage of a horrifying theater, where I had become the leading actress. But I could only stand there, unable to find a single word that made sense. Reddit comments, Hopeful Mom 92. Oh God, I could barely finish reading this part. I can't imagine what it must be like to watch the police search your home. Sarah, you're so strong. I hope the kids didn't understand what was happening and stayed safe. Truth-teller 85. I know that feeling of helplessness. My brother was once involved in fraud, and the police came to our house. It leaves a scar that lasts a lifetime. All for Theckids. I hope you have someone who can help you. It's important not to face this nightmare alone. Thank you for sharing this. It means so much to those who might face a similar situation. I continue my story because reality now feels more terrifying than any fictional plot. Now, I'm not sure if I'll ever find my way out of this labyrinth of lies. The police officers were intruding into every corner of our home, as though it were filled with dangerous secrets, each action feeling as brutal as a blow to the heart. I stood silently in the middle of our small living room with the laminated flooring we had installed just last fall when money was tight after another one of Michael's business trips. I remembered how, together with the kids, we'd painted handprints on the walls, trying to fill the house with some joy. Now those same walls seemed to witness our life being turned upside down. I tried to stay composed, to hold back my tears, because Alice, my older daughter, was still peeking around the corner. She's only 6, but I knew that children sense more than we realize. Her big brown eyes held the same question echoing in my mind. Why is this happening to us? I tried to make sense of how Michael could do such a thing. The man I met in 2010, in a small coffee shop at the intersection of Lincoln Street and Drake Avenue, had always seemed so reliable. I remember how we talked for hours, sharing our dreams. He wanted to start his own software business, and I dreamed of opening an art gallery. Were those dreams as hollow as all the promises he made to me later? My hands were trembling as I finally sat down on the edge of the sofa we bought on discount from IKEA in 2018. The police were opening drawers and cabinets, and memories surfaced of the times Michael would disappear for weeks, telling me about crucial meetings with investors. He always looked so tired when he returned. I even felt guilty sometimes for not being more grateful for his work, which allowed us to buy the kids new things or spend a week at a modest motel by Lake Michigan. But now those business trips replayed in my mind like poisonous memories, and I couldn't believe I'd trusted him so blindly. A police officer pulled out an envelope from our shared desk. My gaze fell on it involuntarily. It was filled with documents I knew nothing about. "Do you know about these papers?" Anderson asked, his cold gaze falling on me, as if sensing my life disintegrating right before him. I shook my head. Something inside me seemed to break apart. It was hard to breathe. What could I say? Would any words help if I even confessed that I didn't know the man who had slept beside me all these years? My greatest fear was uncertainty. What would happen to the children? How would I cope? Images flashed through my mind. Joyful days when we decorated the Christmas tree together. Jack's first laugh, now only 4 years old, and how Michael would lift him up, promising to always be there. Those promises now felt as false as our family photos hanging on the walls. "Why did you do this, Michael?" I picked up my phone to text my brother James, who lived an hour away from us in the Joliet suburbs. He had always been my support, though we rarely saw each other. I wrote briefly, "The police are at our house. I need help." I never thought it would be so difficult to reach out to him in a moment like this. Tears finally broke through as I tried to stay strong for the children. My hands dropped helplessly as I realized. This house, this world I had tried to preserve for our children, was crumbling faster than I could keep it together. Reddit comments, anxious beautiful. "This is so painful to read. Sarah, you are incredibly strong. I feel your despair and heartbreak, but you're not alone. We're here to support you." Truthseeker 123. This sounds like an actual nightmare. I can't imagine what it's like to watch your life literally torn apart in front of you. Stay strong for the kids. Lost Insanity 91. Those moments when you realize you never really knew the person closest to you. It's soul-crushing. I have no words. Stay strong, Sarah. I hope justice is on your side. I'm writing this with trembling hands and a heart that feels like it's pounding in my throat. I never thought things could get worse. But it seems like fate keeps pushing me into a whirlpool of unexpected revelations. It's been 45 minutes since the police showed up at the door of our house on Lincoln Street. Those have been the longest 45 minutes of my life. I still sat on our gray sofa in the small living room, now a scene of chaos. The contents of our closets scattered across the floor, our personal items reduced to a mess. Every minute the detectives spent combing through our rooms felt like another step into an abyss. A world where everything I believed was true revealed itself as a lie. As I tried to comfort the children, who were already beginning to worry from the raised voices and the unfamiliar people in uniform, one of the officers approached me with an expression I'll never forget. It was the look of someone who delivered bad news every day, and no longer bothered to hide his exhaustion from it. "Mrs. Smith, we need to discuss these papers," he said, holding a thin folder. I'd seen those documents before, but what was inside froze me to the core. They were copies of real estate contracts from Jacksonville, Florida, dated 2021. They bore my husband Michael's signature, alongside a woman named Amelia Green. The contract stated that they purchased a house together for $450,000. I nearly fainted. Amelia Green? Who was she? And why on earth was Michael buying a house in Florida with another woman? My heart pounded like I just run a marathon. I tried to recall all of Michael's business trips, including the one in April 2021, when he disappeared for 3 weeks. I'd even joked back then that he was probably having a coffee on a sandy Florida beach somewhere. But now nothing seemed funny. Nothing was funny at all. The police found more evidence. Bank account statements, phone records, calls where Michael discussed finances, and large sums that had disappeared from our joint accounts without explanation. Everything I'd thought of as minor expenses or business dealings now seemed entirely different. Everything he'd told me about his work trips and promises was crumbling like a sandcastle hit by the waves. As I tried to process all these discoveries, a wave of despair crashed over me. My whole life, 13 years of marriage with Michael, seemed like one enormous lie. It was hard to breathe, hard to think. I got up from the sofa and walked to the kitchen trying to calm myself down. But it didn't help. I wanted to scream, to tear things apart. How could he do this? How could he look me in the eyes every morning, making breakfast for our kids, and not tell me the truth? Echoes of memories and thoughts shattered in my head like broken glass. I thought of that night in August 2017, when we were nearly out of money, and Michael promised that things would get better. I believed he was genuinely trying for our family. Was that a lie too? I remembered the times we laughed together, the way he sang lullabies to our kids before bed. Were those moments just scenes in his grand theater of deception? I looked at my trembling hands and felt only despair. Did I even know who I was anymore? My identity had always been tied to this family, my husband, our children, our shared dreams. And now, standing in our house with our belongings scattered around like crime scene evidence, I didn't know how I'd ever piece myself back together. Reddit comments. Just surviving, Mum. Sarah, I can't even begin to imagine the horror you're going through. This betrayal is beyond words. Gather all the support you can from friends and family. You're not alone. Florida Truths. I live in Jacksonville and stories like this aren't uncommon here. People hide behind fake faces and live double lives. I hope you find a way to get through this. Mindflicked89. This feels like a real-life detective novel, but with the worst possible ending for a family. Stay strong, Sarah. And remember, you're stronger than you think. I don't know how to continue, but I have to share this believing that words have power. The power to preserve memories, to heal, or at least to help me understand what to do next. That evening, as it grew darker and the streetlights flickered on in our neighborhood, the police finally finished their search. The clock in the kitchen read 9:32 p.m., but it felt like an eternity had passed. I'd already put the kids to bed, reading them a bedtime story in a shaky voice. Jack fell asleep quickly, as he always did, but Alice kept her eyes on me, searching my face for any sign of calm. I hugged her tighter than ever, though it wasn't what she really needed. She needed her dad. Her dad. And I didn't know how to explain to her that he wasn't who we thought he was. After the kids were asleep, I was left alone with my grief. The house seemed to breathe with fear in every corner, and the silence was suffocating. I stood in the kitchen holding an old photo album. The cover bore the date, April 2015, our first family picnic in Grant Park, Chicago. Michael had been laughing, holding Alice in his arms as she tasted her first strawberry. I remember how she cried at the sour taste, and he just hugged her and said that first impressions could always be deceiving. Feels like a cruel joke now. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table, pulling me out of this memory. My younger brother, James, finally replied to my text. "I'm on my way. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he wrote. And only then did I realize how much I'd been waiting for him. For someone to help me weather this storm. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't process the fact that the man I'd spent nearly 13 years with could deceive me so thoroughly. But how? My mind was a mess of questions, each one hitting like an atomic blast. What does this mean for our future? Will I ever be able to climb out of this pit? Other dates surfaced in my memory. March 14, 2018, when Michael disappeared for 10 days, supposedly attending a business conference in San Francisco. But now I understood that this might have been just another excuse. I remembered sitting on our old couch, later replaced because of the kids' stains, waiting for his call, convincing myself he was doing it all for us. Most women might have seen the signs, but not me. I believed him blindly because without that belief, everything would have fallen apart even sooner. When James finally showed up at the door at 10:15 p.m., I broke down in his arms. I never thought I'd need my brother's support like this again. The way I had when our mother died and he'd held me, promising that everything would be all right. Now he looked at me the same way, but we both knew things would never be all right again. We sat in the kitchen, drinking the weak coffee I'd brewed, speaking in whispers to avoid waking the kids. He talked to me about legal options, how to find a lawyer, what to do next. But I could barely hear him. My heart was pounding so fast it felt ready to burst. "Sarah, you're not alone. We'll get through this together, he said, looking directly into my eyes. But is that even possible? When you lose everything you've built your life on, how can you ever start over? There was no answer. And that terrified me the most. I remember watching James leave at 11:30 p.m., feeling a bit more at peace but still utterly shattered. My mind replayed all the moments with Michael that now felt so false. Could those days, filled with happiness and warmth, really have been real? Or was it all just an act masterfully orchestrated by the man I loved? My world had been blown to pieces, and I had to gather them up, not knowing if anything whole was left. Reddit comments. Healing Heart 96. This is heartbreaking, Sarah. But having James there to support you is so important. Remember, you're strong, even when everything feels shattered. Believe in Jim 25. Your story is painful to read. It reminds us not to judge people's choices because they don't always see the whole truth. Praying that you find peace. Never too soon. These dates. It's gut-wrenching. I can't imagine the pain of realizing that all your best memories might have been part of a huge lie. Stay strong. We're here for you.